Marketer of the day, number 413. Consistency, persistence, discipline, and creativity. Overcome frustration, build a brand and a following with Jim Sweeney. Hey everyone, and thanks for listening. We're talking right now with Jim Sweeney, and Jim has crafted his digital innovation to become the first universal animated brand in sports, and his property has enjoyed an incredible start in digital media. In addition to penning 800 plus blogs, Jim has also published 40 Mike sports comic books, and his goal is to license Mike as an alter ego animated character to a major sports network. Gonna have a lot of different discussions today, have a lot of fun. How are things, Mr. Jim?
Everything is great living here in Florida. You know, we dodged a big bullet with Hurricane Irma a couple of weeks ago, and I'm back to work, nose in front of the computer, creating content and loving life.
Super great. It's what it's all about, living the dream, still alive, all that fun stuff. And so, what kind of content are you creating? What kind of projects do you have these days?
I'm pretty consistent. 3 times a week, I post a blog through the voice of my Mike cartoon sports character. And just about every day, I'm doing research for, one of my future books. And I'm also pretty much on a weekly basis looking to develop content for future animated shorts as told through the voice of my Mike cartoon character.
Okay, great. And do you have some website addresses to list out for us so that way we can maybe follow along or check out what some of these characters, what some of this stuff is?
Yeah, the best way to find me is themike.com. That's TheeMike.com. TH2E's MIKE.com, as in the long-awaited microphone messiah. The ultimate talking head on sports. I got all kinds of taglines for my character. He's a talking head. He's a microphone by the name of Mike. I mean, how simple is that? And fortunately, when we went to trademark him a few years ago, no one had ever thought about trademarking a very simple idea of calling a microphone Mike.
Nice. So it was just everyone thought of all the complicated ideas. You said this thing, it's too simple. Everyone else probably thought, I'm not even going to bother looking it up myself because someone else has got the thing of it. But then eventually you broke the pattern, right?
Exactly. So people have said to me over the last couple of years, man, that's a brilliantly simple idea. I'm thinking, well, thanks for the generous compliment, but I really never thought it that way. I just thought it was something you needed to do, trademark Mike as a microphone, and so be it. So Mike, we call him the ultimate talking head on sports because he's a talking head on sports.
Awesome. And so what came, how did this idea come about, and why did you decide to have a cartoon character as opposed to just being you and saying what you wanted to say?
I've never envisioned myself on television or sitting behind a desk like reporting on sports in an ESPN or Fox or NBC sports studio environment. But I've always had the idea of Mike. I felt like it was born with me. I felt like it coursed through my DNA, at birth. And I've had this fascination and affinity for words, for humor. I love sports, and I love truth-telling. And I feel like you can utilize a cartoon character, an animated character in the marketplace because people can't remain angry at a cartoon character for long. And I think a cartoon character can get away with saying things where he pushes the envelope a little without ever stepping over the line that can get people to think, that could get people to discuss, that could get people to view a situation a little bit more differently because it was told through the voice of a cartoon character that challenged you to discuss it. And cartoon characters are all about humor. And I think my Mike is a funny guy. He's witty. He's clever. He looks at things through an entirely different lens when he views the world of sports. So that's why I came out with the guy, is because I wanted to say the things that I wanted to say, but I wasn't really comfortable with my being that individual that would say those things, whether it be like a radio show or a podcast or a television series or a YouTube series. I want it to go through the voice of the character who eventually can get licensed, and he could be like a SpongeBob or a Bart Simpson, but in sports.
That's super interesting. And so you said in there that like there's a bunch of benefits to having this character that you created, and one can be that he can wake people up and get people to think and maybe say things that you normally wouldn't say, because if you were too far out there, maybe there'd be some blowback or things like that. And so, I mean, what kind of things is this character saying that requires a character to be made? Like, is he like super outrageous, over the top at times, or like what kind of I guess like edgy things is this character saying?
I guess the edgiest that Mike has become is talking about lyrics and songs and in music. I mean, one of the things that I've personally studied over the course of the last several years is lyrics in songs written by like the rap artist Jay-Z and other people that don't necessarily get shared like on mainstream TV because it's something that would get beeped out. And I'm thinking, come on, man, if would you want your kids listening to that kind of stuff? Because a lot of it is misogynistic, racially insensitive, and things that I think could be, told through the voice of my Mike character to get people to talk. And one of probably the most downloaded blog that I've ever had is every Tuesday I write a blog called 2 Cent Tuesday, and it's Mike's 2 cents on what he sees happening in sports. And he wrote about Jay-Z and the lyrics. I actually studied the lyrics of every album that he had ever published. And I just wanted people to think, to talk. Is this something that you want your kids listening to? Is this something that's mainstream or what? And I got overwhelmingly positive comments as a result of posting that blog. I had some people that said, hey, it's freedom of speech. Yes, it is. And, I definitely agree with anybody, when it comes to freedom of speech. People have the right to say anything they want to say, but I believe they need to say it responsibly. And even in songs, I think some songs are very irresponsible.
Well, great. And so you bring all these different issues to light, and you mentioned a few minutes ago and you mentioned a few times in here that you like to blog regularly, like you like to blog 3 times a week. And so, do you have any sort of process there? Because I imagine that there's always a lot of news and things coming out down the pipeline, especially with sports. But then it also seems like it's really easy to either fall into the same things everyone else is talking about, or talk about something that's not timely. So, for example, like that, the talking about the Jay-Z lyrics, like how did something like that come about? Was it like just something that was always on your mind, or presented itself to you, or like how do you come up with these new ideas all the time?
Well, that blog was over a year old, but it was something that was prompted me to write it because what I had either seen or heard in the media. And I do follow a formula each week. I want to blog 3 times a week. Every Tuesday, I do a 2 Cent Tuesday sports blog. So that's my opinion as told through the voice of Mike. And it's to energize and engage, people in conversation to talk about different things. Every Thursday, I'll do a Throwback Thursday. And in my blog, I have my own unique comics. We employ somebody to do sports comics that correspond with what I want to write in a Throwback Thursday sports blog. And it's always about, like last week, Thursday fell on the same day as when the 1919 Black Sox scandal had become unearthed in Major League Baseball. And I wrote about Shoeless Joe Jackson. I had a comment. I did my historical overview on what had happened. And, I voiced my opinion in a Throwback Thursday sports blog. And then every Friday, I do like a Friday Sports Funny, which is just something witty, maybe sometimes outrageous, having to do with something in the sports world. I write about silly managers uniforms that baseball managers wear, or I'll write about spitting in baseball, stop the expectorating, things like that are funny, that are like right at the tip of your nose, that you see when you watch a game or you watch TV, but you really never talk about. And my character is a witty, funny, outside the box cartoon character. So, 2 of the 3 blogs that I write each week, have to stay in line with what my character is. He's funny and he's witty, but then I look to get a newer audience by talking about something that is my opinion, that gets people to find me and to engage them in conversation.
Super interesting, and I like the idea of bringing to light all these little everyday things that you see in sports, but then might not notice. And then once you do notice, then when they go back and watch their baseball game or whatever, they're gonna be thinking about you. It's almost like a Seinfeld thing, where like a Jerry Seinfeld might point out something like everyday and mundane, and it's like, dang, now I can't not see that everywhere I go.
Yeah, and I just said that I follow a normal routine. Well, last week I didn't, because on Saturday, September 30th was International Podcast Day. And I did a bunch of podcasts, several dozen podcasts years ago that were Mike podcasts, where he just pontificates on different things. And my number one most downloaded podcast was called The Sports Bra. And Mike is a little outrageous at times. He's always G-rated, maybe PG-rated at its worst, but he'll never step over the line. He'll never say anything, racially sensitive or sexually, provocative, because I do want to license the character a major sports network, and I want to remain true to the integrity of the character. But in the sports bra, it's just this ridiculous thing that Mike says and pontificates, that the sports bra needs to be for men too, because he's seen too many beefy boys jiggling at the beach. It just goes on and on from there. It's very funny, very silly, and it just once again, I think I hit it out of the park with all the downloads that I got, because it was my best podcast ever. And when I looked at the Libsyn results the day after, it just verified the fact that it was a very successful podcast. People liked it. They enjoyed it. It's very brief. It's only like a minute and 30 seconds. But in the podcast world, probably better than I do, you can do anything you want. You just need to get a message out there. You need to get content out there. And if it appeals to a demo, people are going to find it. They're going to like it. And they're going to come back for more.
Yeah, I agree. And so just to get some clarification here, what's the format of this content? Like, are we talking written, audio only, video, animation? What's the format here?
There's some, as I mentioned, I have several dozen podcasts that I did. They're little blurbs. They're only the max is like 3 minutes in length in a podcast form. I have, several animated shorts. But my focus is not necessarily on animation at this time. It's I want to utilize, the interest that I've built on the Mike character to get great interest from like an ESPN or Fox or NBC or CBS or some major website to want to utilize Mike as an alter ego character on their network. So animation is a very expensive proposition, and I have chosen an alternate route to get an animated character out there by having a blog, by writing over 800 and something blogs, by publishing over 40 sports comic books, by doing a podcast, and that forces people to see the character, to see that it's a talking head, it's a microphone that's witty, that's clever, that's funny, that's engaging, and that's how I've gotten my guy out to market.
Awesome. And so you mentioned a couple times this idea of sports comic books, and I have to kind of confess that I'm not a real huge sports guy. Like when I was younger, I played some Little League, and then at one point, I think somebody bought me, maybe for my birthday or Christmas, some sort of comic book, and it's like at least 20 years ago, so I don't even remember very well, but like there was some kind of comic book when it was like Nolan Ryan, the pitcher, and I can't really remember exactly what it was, but can you kind of refresh my memory and fill us in and let us know what these sports comic books are? Because like I have this very vague, distant memory of a Nolan Ryan pitcher baseball sort of comic book, but I'm not even sure what it was.
Mine is a little bit different. When you're in the creative space, you should be creative. And I like to think that I'm creative, I look at the world a little bit differently. So they're not necessarily comic books in the true sense of comic books. Like you wouldn't see me at Comic-Con. But I have all of these comics. I have a library of, I think it's almost 700 individual unique comics that we paid for to have developed. And I use those comics instead of paying like Getty Images for my own images to put in blogs or books, but I developed my own content, and I have incorporated books around these different comics that follow a formula. And in the case of Mike, everything is about Mike. It's about Mike's opinion. It's about Mike's top 10 picks for baseball greats, or Mike's top 10 Philadelphia sports icons, or case in point, my number one selling comic book always makes people scratch their head when I talk to them about it at first. And I say my number one book that I sell on Amazon is called Mike's spiritual sports favorites. And people will always stop and they say, where the heck is this guy going? Spiritual sports comics? And it's about Mike's take. Remember, he's witty, he's clever, he's funny, he sees things through a different lens. And his spiritual comics are everything having to do with a spiritual thing in sports, like Reggie White, the Minister of Defense. So I got a comic about Reggie White. I write about him. It's Mike's take on Pigeon Heaven. It's usually like the 300 section up in the farthest most reach of the stadium is why he's happy to be at least inside the stadium, even though he needs to use the Hubble telescope to be able to see the action at the plate. And that takes place in Pigeon Heaven. Or things like the Hail Mary pass that was popularized by Roger Staubach back, I think, in the late 60s in the NFL. Or the Immaculate Reception pass, or Tim Tebow. It's all these crazy things that have like a spiritual connotation or nickname involved in sports, and I bring it to life through comics and then through the individual chapter research that I do that's associated with each comic. And people love it because it's different.
And so along those lines, when you make this Amazon stuff and you come up with these ideas, for example, like the spiritual sports comic book and things like that, like when you come up with these, I guess, topics of what these books will be about, is it just 100% what feels good to you, or do you base some of that on what your audience wants? Do you do some research? Like, well, I guess what percentage is it like all of just your own creativity, or is it somewhat based on the market? Like, what's the ratio there?
I would say 100% is just my own creativity. It's my own platform. I have an opportunity, I never feel like I have been intentionally irresponsible. I know I haven't been irresponsible because I work with someone that helps edit 100% of what I do when it comes to putting out a sports comic book. And our intent is to entertain, it's to educate, it's to edify, and in some cases make people just laugh out loud about something. But it's not. I solicit or elicit audience comments because people follow my stuff. They'll write me, they'll comment, and they'll say, "Did you ever think about this? You ever think about that?" And I have some nutty books that I would like to come out. I shouldn't say nutty, clever, funny, outside the box books that I have drafted. They still have to work on. They're probably 6 months to a year from ever being published, but it's based on what people have said. Have you ever thought about doing this? Have you ever considered this? So I do listen to people. I think you'd be foolish if you didn't. But everything that I do put out there, I want it to be told responsibly, but in an entertaining and educational fashion through the voice of my character, Mike. And I always want to remain true to my Mike character.
I love it. Sounds like a really fun, good time. And so you're
it is.
It sounds like it. So you're cranking out all this stuff, and so I'm curious about what you're doing to market yourself. Like you're appearing on podcasts like this one, but I think that it's easy for me, and I can only speak for myself, but it's easy for me to sometimes be cranking out some content and then forget about going back and getting some eyeballs on it. So just out of curiosity, what sort of things are you doing to get more people to see your website and see these Kindle books and all those things?
Well, you could advertise obviously on Facebook, on different groups that I'm a part of, different Facebook groups that I've started, on Twitter. And a couple years ago, I seem to have found a niche on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is an unbelievably valuable free resource. And in LinkedIn, I'm a member of 35 individual sports marketing, sports writers, sports media groups. And cumulatively, I actually sat down once and I hand calculated all of the members in each group, and it was over 2.5 million people. So every time that I post, and that's 3 times a week, I add my content onto all, well, maybe not 35 at a time, but 20, 25 LinkedIn groups. And I seem like I get my most bang for the buck there. And obviously from Twitter, from Facebook, from Google Plus, you get people that become aware of what you do. And even getting back to LinkedIn, there's certain people that run their own groups, or as I mentioned, I have 40 books, 25 I sell, 15 of them I give away for free. And some of the ones that I give away for free, I find out people that are leaders of like youth soccer teams or AAU basketball programs. And I reach out to those people and I send them PDFs, free PDFs of my books. And that helps, I have no idea if that means 2 or 3 people will see what I have done or, 500 or 1,000 people. But you just have to do your due diligence and always follow some disciplined manner in which, once you write your content, it doesn't miraculously appear out there in somebody's inbox. You got to work it. And I do that every time that I post a blog. I will follow, a number of guidelines that I have. It's just my checklist that I have right next to my computer. And I do that in a regimented way. And that's how I believe that people find out about my stuff and why it's been successful.
That's great. And based on what you said there, so it sounds like you put out a blog post, and then right after that, you have your checklist that you go through. You go through the LinkedIn groups, you reach out to people, you post on Facebook and all that stuff. And
yes.
So do you ever set aside any extra time to do anything sort of extracurricular? Like, do you ever say, like, every like Saturday for an hour, I'm going to focus on traffic, anything like that?
I do. When I know that there's something very topical that's happening in sports that I could align what I had just written or one of my books based on what is trending, and I will focus. Sometimes I would like to do it for an hour, but I'm one of these guys that can't sit still for very long. So if it's 20 or 30 minutes, I'll just work the heck out of that hashtag like I did this weekend on International Podcast Day. And I think I got a lot of new incremental traffic because I worked, at INTL Podcast Day, hashtag International Podcast Day. And I found other sports podcasters out there, tagged them, directed them to what I had done. And to answer your question, yes, I do that. Maybe I should do that more often, but when I do that, I see an uptick on what I have just recently created.
Always good when that happens, right? Yeah, you're like,
oh yeah,
let me try
absolutely.
this goofy computer stuff, and then you actually get rewarded with some sort of numbers based on what you did. Amazing stuff, right?
Yes, absolutely.
And so I'm looking at your Amazon page, and I'm seeing that you cover FIFA, Major League Baseball, NBA, NFL. So you cover all the major sports with this character, right? And hockey too, I'm seeing.
Yes, I do. However, there is a science to what I do. Is there's a pie that breaks down, the audiences, by dollar, by eyeballs on the major networks. And far and away, the number one sport is football, whether it's NCAA college football or NFL, and that comprises it's like 38% of the overall pie, followed by baseball, then basketball, then international soccer, then hockey. So I don't try to focus that much on hockey, even though I like hockey, because hockey is it's less than 3% of the overall pie. And I'm not looking to be sports specific. I'm looking, I tell people I've created a character that transcends all sports. All sports needs like officials, they need players, participants, referees, but all sports have somebody that reports on the action, and that's where my guy comes in.
And so does that mean that, as this brand grows and all that, is it just going to stay sports only?
I have been told in some of the conversations I had with a major sports network that I've developed an entertainment character that could be a global brand. Now, when I heard that, I thought I was going to get a deal with that network, but I didn't because they had certain contractual obligations with other animated characters. But I think about that periodically, and it gives me motivation and incentive to just keep on keeping on and knock on every door, walk through every door that opens. Even though I'm starting in sports and my love of sports, I don't ever want to just limit my character to the sports world because personally I have a lot to say. And, as I mentioned at the outset of the conversation here, I don't see myself on TV. I don't necessarily see myself, having a radio show, but I could see a cartoon character like my Mike being able to say things that I want to say through the voice of the character that unite, that edify, that encourage, and that do not disparage, do not tear people down, do not excoriate individuals, and that's the type of, while entertaining, and that's who I believe I've created, and I would like to see him with an international platform one day that's much bigger than I currently have.
That would be super cool. And what that reminds me of is like you watch the Ernest movies, right? Like Ernest
Uh,
Goes to Jail and stuff.
Yes, yeah. I can't say that I was a big fan. Not that I didn't like him. I mean, there's so many entertainment options out there. But
Yeah,
yes,
yeah, but I mean, I bring him up because like that dude, he got his start doing car commercials. He'd just be like for like some like one little tiny car dealership in like Sacramento, California or something. He like went and did this one commercial for this little guy, and then like it kept building, and he did some like Thanksgiving thing, and then like all these movies and this TV show. But it's like once he got noticed, once the character was noticed, it kind of took on a life of its own and went into all these different directions. And so that just sounds super interesting. That like once it takes off, it just goes to these other places. And so speaking of that, do you have any new interesting stuff planned for the future for this character, or different like content or viral videos or things like that?
I like to think that when we do spend the money on animation to bring our Mike character to life, that it will go viral. Yes, there are several scripts, that I would like to bring to life. Yes, there are a few more books that I would like to publish. My passion is writing, so I'll continue to write 3 times a week. Um, my goal in 2018 is to get a licensing deal, and the licensing deal could be one of two ways. It could be with a major corporation through an advertising agency that would like to utilize Mike as like a Geico Gecko or an Aflac Duck to be a company or a brand spokesperson. Or the second licensing deal was to have would be to see Mike on an ESPN or a Fox News or Fox Sports or NBC Sports, where he's an alter ego character that banters back and forth with real life celebrity talent on air and just makes the conversation that much more animated, that much more fun, and that much more engaging. That's my goal. That's what I would like to see happen in 2018.
Super great. Well, we'll have to keep an eye on you and see if and when you make it. And so, as far as that big goal of getting on ESPN and getting the brand to just get tons of exposure, are you doing anything proactively for that? Like you mentioned that you do the LinkedIn stuff, you get all the traffic, but have you been like reaching out to some of these places to see about these deals?
Yes, I smile as I answer with an affirmative yes. They get hit up so many times that you really have to be judicious. You have to go after the right department and be knowledgeable, offer them something that brings added value. Just hasn't resonated yet. They know who I am. Maybe the timing just hasn't been right, but I will persist and I will prevail. It's not a question of if, it's just a question of when it happens for me. But to answer your question, yes, it's not like every day I'm pursuing them because I want to be very true to developing content that resonates with everything that I've ever done since I created Mike. And I want to make sure that I'm extremely consistent. There are no skeletons in my Mike closet. I mean, he's always been true to the core set of values and beliefs that we gave him when I first introduced him. So I'm very confident that when people say, hey, we want to sign him, they're going to embrace him, they'll sign him, and they'll flourish with him.
That's great stuff. And as we've been talking, I'm just hearing a lot of like, you have all these creative ideas and things like that, but you're disciplined. You have this set schedule where you're cranking out the content, you're doing the traffic, you're doing the things that you need to do, and that's a great kind of like two halves of the coin, right? On one hand, you have all this
Absolutely.
persistence. On the other hand, then you're kind of letting it all fly and letting what ideas come to the surface come out. So it's really great to kind of to hear about this process. And I mean, I don't know about you, but sometimes I get sick about hearing about websites and WordPress and apps and all that, and it's just sometimes good to kind of go to the other section and talk about this kind of case study where you have something new and interesting and different, and you're just trying to get that to market there. And so, having said all that fun stuff, Have you ever had the doubt about keeping going, or did you have like any like uncertainty as you were getting this whole thing started?
No uncertainty, no doubt. It's having to deal with the frustration. That's the greatest challenge because I believe I know exactly what I created and I could see it. I could see, to use the sports analogy, I could already see the end zone celebration after the big touchdown catch in the closing seconds of the game. And I know what I put into it. I know the integrity of what I've created. I know the potential for the entertainment and educational value of the character. It's happened on like a localized, regionalized basis. It hasn't happened to the degree I know it will happen someday. And sometimes when I see the opportunity and it doesn't come to fruition immediately, that frustrates me. And that's the biggest challenge, is just going through, the frustration that you feel because you know you got something, but other people don't see, how it could help them at that point in time.
That's a great attitude. So it's not like you're having all this failure. You're just going through the frustration of getting to where you need to be and you want to be and where you inevitably will be.
Yeah, and this is my full-time gig. I mean, I could write from anywhere. I love to travel, so when I travel, if I'm all I need is my notebook computer and access to the internet, and I could post a mic blog. And we make a little bit of money out of it. And the way I look at it is money isn't everything. I enjoy what I do. I don't feel like I work a day in my life because I enjoy what I do. But my wife has told me the money will come. And once it becomes successful, it'll be hugely successful, and the money will come. But that's not my motivation. My motivation is to be happy, to have fun what I do, to enjoy what I do, to not have to fret, to not have to be, like reporting to work and being chained to my desk, metaphorically speaking. I love what I do. I want to continue doing it. And I'd like to see Mike as an international global icon one day. And I believe that it will happen. Not if, but it's just a question of when it will happen.
Awesome. I believe it too. And it sounds like you have a great attitude. And in general, this is just the best time to be alive because we can put out the podcast, we can play with the format, we can show that this thing that we've created gets traffic on its own. And then when it comes time to get it in front of a larger audience, you say, look, here's all the data, here's all the proof that these Kindle books I was putting out, these
Yes.
podcasts, these blogs, look at the traffic. This is backed not only by the audience that you were able to create from all these new opportunities, but also by the data. So, I mean, great stuff and great motivation for anyone out there who is looking to do something similar. And so theemike.com, TheeMike.com is the place to be. And is that the only website for people to check out, or do you want to throw out some other stuff for people to click on?
No, the Mike. You can get to Amazon from there, or you could download up to 15 sports comic books for free. I'm unabashedly commercial in my free sports comic books. I tell people at every chapter, at the end of every chapter, I have a little affiliate ad from either a sports memorabilia or Fanatics or the NFL store, NBA store, NHL store. And, I let people know. I'm very transparent, and I said, this is the way I make my money. And if you're so led, if you want to click on this link, takes you to the store. If you buy something, I say, thank you very much. You're supporting me in my business because it is my full-time gig.
Great stuff. So make sure that you go to themike.com and see what Mike has on there. See how he's monetizing it. See what new things he's adding all the time. Go there. You'll be glad you did. You'll have a lot of fun. And thanks, Mr. Jim, for stopping by and telling us about this journey you've been on and the things you've been trying and the ideas you have and the things that have been working. It's been really interesting getting inside your head a little bit there and hearing about your thought process. So I appreciate that. I appreciate you. And thanks for stopping by.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Have you had a chance to rate and review the show yet? If not, go right now to marketeroftheday.com/iTunes. Click View in iTunes and click the Ratings tab. We would really appreciate a 5-star rating or whatever you think is fair, plus a quick 1-sentence review to tell us how we're doing. Thank you very much and have a wonderful day.